All right, if you would, I'd like to start by having everybody go out to, it's kind of hard to read from there. Let me see if I can get this a little clearer too. But I'd like you to all go out to mongodb.com. MongoDB.com. Hopefully, once you go out there, it will look like it does on my screen. All right, so that's it. You don't need this, just the mongodb.com will suffice. Once you go out there, please click the button that says Start Free. When you do, you will have to sign up for an account. I would recommend leaving the Your Company blank, unless you want to put in Rankin Technical College. That's totally up to you, but I would just as soon, recommend you leave it blank. All right? For the how long have you been using this, I would choose the I'm learning MongoDB. All right? Your work email, I would use your Rankin email if I were you, your first name and your last name. And now to get into this, they do have a very good thing here that if you forget your password, you can re-get it. But if you've got a password or something similar to something you usually use or whatever, use that or write it down or do whatever. I've already got one, so I'm not going to do that. All right, and you have to agree to the terms of service. Okay, and then click the button. Now, it may, I don't remember because it's been a while since I've signed up. It may ask you for a few other things. I will tell you, I have never been sent an email by them other than maybe a confirmation email when I first started. And when I went in, because I couldn't remember my password, because it had been almost a year since I'd been at it. And then I remembered it later, but I'd already changed it. So that's okay. But, then click you want to get get started free. After you do that, if you ever want to go in, you just go to sign in. You come in here and you put in your email address, and it'll ask you for your password. All right, so let's see if I remember now. Of course it doesn't like that. Thought that's what I set it to. Let's see. Now address change.
Thank you.
Oh, bless you. Of course, no, I can't remember it. I thought I just reset it. Reset password. So give me just a second here to get my bearings, so to speak. Okay, open that. All right. And just so you note this, even though I just I asked for a change password link, it still comes back, and yet, because there's a lot of security built into this, and it says, hey, you are going to do a reset, and now it's, sooner or later at least, it's going to come back, and it's going to also require that I, where is it? To do a verify right there. So I have to tell it to send a code, and it will. And it takes literally just a matter of, hopefully at least a matter of seconds. There it is. And you double click on that code then, and you literally can just paste it in, and it'll put it in the right ones for you. All right. And I'm in. You're in. Now, what we're going to do, again, I already have, you don't have. So if yours doesn't look like mine, don't let that throw you at all. Okay? All right, then I'd like you to go out to here, please. Again, I will make it bigger so you can see it. This is going to be too big, but I'll make it smaller so you can see it. Please go out to there. Again, you should only need to go out to right here. Once you put that in, if your screen looks like mine here where it says install MongoDB, etc., you're good. All right, I've just installed it yesterday so I could go through all the exercises we're going to do today. So I'm not going to do it again. Okay? Is everybody here?
No.
No,
All right.
Give me a 404.
it gave me that too.
Maybe it does. Oh, it wants the docs. I'm sorry. Yeah, it'll want the docs. You have to start it with docs. That's my mistake. docs.mongodb.com/manual/installation. Then it should look like the screen here. Yes?
No.
Still gave you an error?
Sorry, we can't.
Try it with the HTTPS then. I didn't think you'd need all that, but
Is there, yes, everything you got.
I mean, if we go to the docs page, is there a way to get to the installation?
well, let's find out. All right, so that's the docs page. All right.
Got it.
Yeah, I just looked up MongoDB installation and looked for that link.
All right, so you just Googled MongoDB install, which should be there, which should get you to there, which is what I gave you. I just copied it. I don't know why it wouldn't have
I
worked
don't
when
know why
you...
trying to go that directly didn't work.
Did that
but
work?
This one worked. There it is.
We got community edition.
That's what we want anyway.
Okay.
Okay? The community edition is the free one. All right? So you want to click here where it says install MongoDB Community Edition on Windows. All right? I'm not going to do that because, again, I've already got it installed.
So,
When you go through the process, it will, when you start to go through the install process, there should be a checkbox there that says do you also want to install Atlas. Make sure that stays checked. Okay?
Where exactly are you?
Again, go back to Google and just Google install MongoDB. And click that first link
Right there? On Windows
No,
or just this one?
right there.
Okay.
Now go down and find the one. It's on the left, up now, up. Should be down here.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I didn't know that screen here.
It'll give you basically an installer, a Microsoft or whatever it is, an MSI file. Right mouse click on it and choose open when done. You should be able to choose every default. To my knowledge, there shouldn't be anything special that you have to do in order to do that. Questions?
It's got a thing right here that says like step one, download the installer, and then MongoDB download center is still completed.
I don't know, like
But
I
when I
said,
click on that,
when I did it yesterday, it gave me none of the stuff you guys are talking about.
yeah,
So, I mean, everything worked just fine, so.
Yeah, I click on it and brings me to a
Right,
resources
this is
tab on the page.
where I'm at. Choose the type of deployment.
That's what I have too.
Oh, it didn't give me-
Use click on where it says MongoDB Community Server on your left bottom.
This one?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, just the
And go and click on download. No, it didn't make me do all that yesterday. I don't know why it would change from today to yesterday, because I had no problem with it, but. Yeah, just click the download button, Angie, if you haven't already.
Yeah, I have, it's
Okay.
going.
And then you should be able to right mouse click where it's loading it in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, and choose open when done, or run, or whatever, you know. Any problems, Aaron?
So it didn't give me the installer, it gave me to a page that told me where to find it.
Yeah, that's, like I said, it didn't do that for me, but it,
Trusted Atlas.
Are you on the thing that says choose the type of deployment?
Scope and thread.
yeah. Click on there, and then get rid of that.
Or I click download and stuff.
Okay, that's fine, yeah, good. Then right mouse click on the download that's right there and tell it to open when done.
You want to do that, it doesn't try, or it doesn't.
Doesn't work? Okay. Then probably is your default browser.
I mean,
Chrome?
I'll just open it whenever it's done.
Okay.
Does that work?
Now that is eventually the product that we're going to use when we're working on this, because one of the things that's going to be downloaded in here is going to be Atlas. Don't worry about it for right now, okay? I mean, what I'm saying when I say don't worry about it, I mean don't worry about what it means, because we're going to be going over it next week already. I'm going to wait till everybody's done.
Do you want us to go ahead and
I
install?
don't, yeah, you can install it.
Okay.
You might want to take a picture of that screen, so just hit your print screen button and save it, but
Okay.
you probably won't need it, but I've had people before who've done that and said they were glad they did.
Okay.
I mean, I did mine yesterday too, so I've got, there's mine, so.
In
I
the
said-
installer, he just wants to press complete, which is all program features.
Yes,
and so-
should be able to take every default that's in there.
Okay.
Okay.
It's not a long install, it'll take maybe a minute or two. Okay. When you're done, don't even worry about what's on the screen, we'll look at it all together in just a minute. I want to wait until everybody is finished. So just do this when yours has been all installed.
So what is MongoDB?
MongoDB, we're going to talk about it in just a moment, but MongoDB is what's called a NoSQL or NoSQL database. That doesn't mean it's not SQL. It means not only SQL. So NoSQL doesn't mean that there isn't SQL. It means not only. But there are differences between SQL, like we've been using with MySQL, and MongoDB. We're going to start looking at them as soon as everybody gets their download finished. Because we have one more download to do, and then we'll be ready. And what you're downloading now is one of the things that you can use to work with databases using Mongo. All right, it's not the only thing. It might have been wiser to have had you guys do this yesterday, but with the engine not being here, we'd still be at the same place. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter that much one way or the other. What we're going to end up doing in just a couple minutes is you're going to be writing a boatload of queries. I've got them all here. Everything I want you to do, I've got on here. I'm going to do it with you. All right? Now, what you may want to do while you're waiting for this to download, if it's still downloading, is I sent you two files today. One is called class.json, and the other one is called, I don't remember what it's called, .json. All right, so one is class.json, and the other one is zips.json. Don't worry about the zips one. That's just a huge file. Don't worry about that. But if you want to, go ahead and open up the class.json file, which is small. It's less than 100 lines. So it's right here. So yours, when you open it up, in whatever editor you're using, I don't know why it makes those red, but it has something to do with the color coding in this editor. So it's about 60 lines. All right? Now, what we eventually want to be able to do is to do something fairly GUIized with this. But because I want you to learn it both ways, for right now, we're going to be using in just a minute the MongoDB shell. It used to be, up until a while ago, that when you wanted to run the MongoDB shell, you had to come in and literally you had to open up two of these windows. You don't have to do this anymore, but you had to open up two of these. And in one of them, you had to type in mongod and hit enter, and it would just sit there. And in the other one, then you could do your work. But you don't have to do that anymore. All right? Now, how many people have a machine that's still downloading the stuff?
Yeah, it's kind of stuff.
What?
It's stuck on installing MongoDB something. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to just, if you look up on the screen here, all right, there is an actual, this stuff that's right here, I actually took from an online resource. In that online resource, MongoDB versus MySQL differences. Now, one thing to realize, this document was written by MongoDB. So if they're comparing themselves to somebody else, it would be like, there would be a big difference if you had Walmart versus Amazon and you were reading it based, that Sam Walton from Walmart wrote it, as opposed to Walmart versus Amazon if Jeff Bezos wrote it. Understand what I'm saying? So this is at least somewhat slighted because it's on the MongoDB website. All right? Now, they are fine in here with what they say, so let's look at it. MySQL is a popular, free, easy-to-use, open relational database management system. That's true. It stores data using tables and rows. Okay, that's true. It enforces referential integrity. If you don't remember that, that's the idea, again, that you take when you've got a one-to-many relationship, you take the primary key on the one side, you put it in as an extra field in the many side, all right, so you're able to do joins, etc. All right. You also need to create schemas in here, and if you create a database schema for MySQL, and let's just assume for a second that you say that every field in there is required, that's basically the way you do it, right? And it's not like you can easily go in and add new fields. You can do it. There's an alter table command to do it. But if I have a database with 1 million records in there, it's typically tough to go in and do something like that. All right. MongoDB, as it says, it's also free. It's also open source. But again, notice, it is a NoSQL database. And they say in here that it stores information as a series of JSON-like documents. What does that mean? That means that this is the way that you store information in there. You don't even have to, I put it on multiple lines so you could read it. You don't even have to do that if you don't want to. The way it actually stores it is, rather than storing it using JSON, it does it in something that's familiar, or that's similar to JSON, which is JavaScript object notation, but it stores it in BSON, all right, which is binary type of object notation. But it's pretty much the same thing. And believe it or not, right here, I'm going to show you one of the differences. In JSON, typically the way that you set this up is you take both the key and the value and you put them both into double quotes. All right? And you can see I've done that here. But you don't have to. When you're working in NoSQL, the key does not have to be in double quotes. The value is in double quotes unless it's a numeric value or unless it's a Boolean value. But if it's some kind of a string value, of course, it must be in double quotes. All right. So with that said, as it says here, MongoDB documents consist of a series of key value pairs. Okay? And I don't want to sit and keep reading this to you. They're both mature. They're both established. All right? So it says here, why should you use one as opposed to the other? Well, especially if you're not a database fanatic or you're somebody who's just learning, MongoDB is probably easier. This is the big thing why. It has no enforced schema. You don't create a schema first. You just start putting in your records, all right, which are not called records in there, but it's not that big a thing. All right. So they say that, for instance, if you are using MySQL for like a banking application where things are rigid and everything has to be kind of done the same way, MySQL might be a better approach. All right. But if you're not necessarily. All right. Virtually, I cannot think of anything that you can do in MySQL that you can't do in MongoDB, and vice versa. All right. Now, the one thing is, as far as doing, what's the hallmark really of MySQL? Being able to do joins. All right. You don't do them at all like that in here. In fact, a lot of times they're not even necessary. That'll make more sense as we go on. All right. So they're saying here that Mongo is typically more scalable. The performance, in a way, it's like comparing apples and oranges because you're comparing two different things. You're comparing two different types of systems. All right. Typically, Mongo is going to be more flexible because it's much easier for you to add new machines, etc. All right. What we're going to look at today, and the main reason I'm showing it to you, and I'm showing it to you like this is kind of the older way of looking at this, and there's still a bunch of stuff out there that's done like this. Now, we're going to be using MongoDB, but almost immediately, we're going to be using a plugin for MongoDB that's called Mongoose, which makes it much easier to work with MongoDB. All right, and the reason I'm bringing that up is if you look right in here on security, yeah, it sounds weird because I told you that really there is no schema. Once you add Mongoose to MongoDB, you put a schema on there, but you don't do it the way we've been doing it. You do it in your JavaScript code. All right, and that's what we're going to be doing starting next week. All right, so again, which is better? I'm not saying that either one is better than the other one is. All right, so before we go on, just one more quick little thing, just so you see this. All right, you sometimes hear with databases, people refer to a database cluster. Notice it's a collection of databases managed by a single instance running on a database server. What the hell does that mean? You had a cluster in your phpMyAdmin. It had a listing of all your databases, right? That's a cluster. And it's still referred to as a cluster in MongoDB. A database is still called a database. But you can see here's where they start differing. What we used to call a table, or what we're used to calling a table, in a relational database management system like MySQL, is called a collection in here. And the reason I'm telling you that is like, it's a big deal. You never hear it referred to as a table in MongoDB. All right? And what we call a row or what we call a record is now called a document. So whereas we had records in a table in MySQL, here we'll have documents in a collection, all right, in MongoDB. And, sometimes people call them columns, sometimes they call them fields. They're just referred to as fields in here. All right, now you don't have to go to these things yet. So what I want you to do next is, you bring that up. I guess I do have to bring that back and go over to here. All right? And I mentioned to you before that what you used to have to do was open up two of these command windows. And you don't have to do that anymore. All right? So, since we don't have to do that anymore, then it's like, okay, fine, then what do we do? Well, I want you to go out to another URL, and there it is. And again, you should only need this. And we're going to download the shell. That mongodb.com/try/download/shell should get you to right where I am. Now, did yours finish downloading?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everybody's got the regular MongoDB downloaded. Good. All right. Once you get here, and even if you're not quite there yet, but once you get here, you're again going to want to go down, and hopefully it already figured out that you're a Windows 64-bit machine, and just click the download button, much like you did before. The same kind of thing should happen. And again, it should not be a super long install. All right? Hopefully it won't be at least. So if you look right here, I'm not going to read to you, but it's basically a command line interface that you can use to work with this. And if you say, I don't know what you mean, you will in just a couple minutes. All right, and I'll tell you what, while we're looking or waiting, I'm going to go, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to go out to another couple sites. Okay, you don't have to do this. All right? And here we go. So we went here to sign up for the account. If you look here, again, under docs.mongodb.com/manual/reference, that's the reference manual, basically. All right? So if I go out to, oh, darn you. If I go out, let me try it again. Are you kidding? It just keep, oh, brother. I hate this machine. All right. This has got a reference that's got all sorts of stuff in it, and it's all hyperlinked. So for instance, if you wanted to know about the different operators, etc. I'm not going to go through any of these right now, but just so you know, that's where it is. All right? But what we're going to be most concerned with is going to be this one right here. So I'm going to go out here. And it's got your major CRUD operations. Now, personally, I wish this was longer. I wish they had more examples. All right? They do have some. I wish there were more. They're not. So we work with what we've got, and that's totally fine. All right? All right. Are is your stuff still loading? No, it's finished loading? All right, yours is finished. Is yours finished? Is yours finished? Good. All right. Then let's see if we can get this thing to work. Now, if what I'm about to tell you, if yours doesn't work, it's going to be interesting because I'm not sure why it wouldn't. Because you both have done the downloads, or you've all done the downloads. So go into your search box in your bottom left-hand corner where it says type here to search. You should have something like that. And type CMD in there, which will open up a DOS-like command window right there. I'm going to make mine full screen just because I want you to be able to see what I'm typing in, okay? Now, type in Mongo SH, which is the Mongo shell. If yours comes up and looks similar to this, that's good. If it comes up and says it can't find it, means somehow something was wrong with your downloads. Did anybody get an error when you tried to do this? Yours worked, yours worked, yours worked, yours worked. Good. Well, one thing is, it's not a big thing, but just so you know, because you're going to want to do this eventually, CLS clears your screen. Okay? All right, so if you want to clear the screen. Now, there are different commands that we use here as opposed to the commands that we used when we were working in MySQL. Don't do this. Don't do what I'm about to show you. We used to say this. We used to do that when we were in MySQL, and that showed you all your databases. Here it's just simply, you can do this. Show DBs. That's it. Now, you probably don't have a MyFirstDB. Don't worry about it, because that's the one that we're going to be working on in here. All right? But go ahead and do the show DBs, and make sure okay? Now, it's a little bit weird, for lack of better words, because when we wanted to create a new database when we were working inside of MySQL, either you were in phpMyAdmin and you clicked the new button, or you could have even done it from here and it would have been create database. You know, you've seen those commands before. You don't do that here. There's no type of create command. You use the word use. All right. Now, I'd like you to type in, I'm just going to call it MyDB, but I'd like you to type in MyFirstDB. Okay. If you want MyDB, it doesn't really matter. All right. And as soon as you hit enter, do you notice right now that mine says test? You see that? As soon as I hit enter, see how it switched? Now, the weird thing is, even though it did that, it didn't create the database. It doesn't technically create the database until you put some information into it. What do I mean? Well, if I type in again, show DBs, notice what's not there. I just made MyDB, it's not in my list, even though it's showing it right here. All right? So it shows basically, you know, what you have. But now there's nothing in here. And remember, if we wanted to show the tables in MySQL, we typed in show tables, and it would show us all the tables that were underneath our database. Well, here, all right, it's not, remember, they're not tables, they're collections. So type in show collections. You're not going to get anything because we haven't made a table yet. All right? So there's nothing there yet, and that's totally fine. All right. So I'm going to clear my screen, and then what I'd like you to do is this. I'm taking for granted that you were all able to open what I showed you before. All right, in other words, this. Right here, this class.json. All I want you to do for now is for just a second, take a look at what's here. Most of the commands that you do in here are going to be prefaced with DB, database, dot users, okay, dot do something. Insert or update or delete, etc. It's going to be something like that. All right? So for right now, we want to insert a single record into here. So before we do this, let's just look at what's in here. String fields are expected to be in double quotes. Okay? You can see that I've got that in there. So the name, the address, the city, the state, and the zip are all string fields. Could we have made the zip field a numeric field? Yes, we could have. And the way we could have done that would have been just to remove the double quotes from right there. All right? Okay. And the married field is a Boolean, so notice it's true. And the salary field is a numeric field. All right, we're going to be manipulating this data that's in here, and I used all of your names in here at one time or another for examples. So I'd like you to grab, if you would please, these first 10 lines, all the way through right there, everything I've got grayed. Also notice no semicolon at the end. You don't have to put that in. You do, if you're running this on the command line for MySQL, you must put a semicolon at the end. We did not have to in PHPMyAdmin. All right, so copy those first 10 lines, copy them to the clipboard, come back, and just right mouse click, and it'll paste them in, and hit enter. And if you get something that looks similar to mine, that's a good thing. The chances of yours having the same object ID exactly as mine are none. All right? One thing to notice right away, it automatically creates an ID for you. And it's a honkin' big ID. I don't know how many characters that is. I've never counted, but it's got to be somewhere around 20 characters. And we're used to auto-incrementing a field called ID, so this would be a 1. Boy, that's a hell of a lot easier in MySQL than it is here. All right. Now, with what we're going to be working with in here, with what we're going to be working with, we're only going to have 6 records. All right. So, for instance, we only have one Angie. We only have one Christopher in our database. But in a real life situation, of course, you'd have typically a lot more than that. So the reason I'm telling you that is there are going to be many times when we go through this today, I'm not going to be using the ID. But that's what you should use really all the time. It really and truly is. All right. Now, if you want to see every record that's in the database, and I realize that right now there is only one. I get that. So we're going to run a command right now, and it's going to look, the output is going to look virtually the same as what we have, except you won't have this acknowledged message. This object ID will go up on top here. All right? And the command to do that is just db.users.find paren, and hit enter. And again, you can see exactly what it looks like then. Now, it sets this up as an array of BSON objects. If you look on the screen, please, see this and see this. Here and here, that's the beginning of our array, and that's the end of our array. All right? So we now have one record in here with that ID, that first name, that last name, etc. I'm not going to do this, but I could put in another record into here right now, and I could have all totally different fields, and it wouldn't care. It would make it kind of tough when I was trying to link stuff together, but I could potentially do that. So clear your screen, please, and go back to here. Now, if you look, I don't want you, well, I guess I do. Yeah. Don't grab this thing in the end, because we're going to do that in just a bit, where it says someone right there. All right. But what I'd like you to do is start on line 12, if you're using, unless you changed your line numbers, and go all the way down to line 51. And that's going to add each one of you as people in this database. So line 12 through line 51. Note the commands, please. The one we just did was insert one. This is insert many. There's also an update one, update many. There's a delete one, and there's a delete many. And there's a find one and a find many. All right? So, again, there's a whole bunch of these commands, and if you're looking for just a single instance, it's got a 1 on the end, O-N-E. If you're looking for all instances, it's got many, M-A-N-Y on the end. Does that make sense? All right, so I highlighted that. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to paste it in. So now I've got my extra records. So I just pasted in Gabriel, Christopher, Aaron, Angie. I have no idea where you guys live. All that stuff is made up. Don't worry about the salaries. Don't worry that Gabriel and Christopher might say, well, how come I've got hobbies and none of the rest of them do? It's because I want to show you some of the stuff that's in here. All right, so if you copied all that in, what you should get at the bottom, you get all this, and at the bottom you should get acknowledge true, and you get the 4 different IDs. Please notice something here. These are E, F, A0, and A1. They are pretty much sequential. Almost always, when you do an insert many like this, they'll be sequential. However, now I'm going to come back and I'm going to clear my screen, and I'm going to do the same command we did before, db.users.find, like we did before. And the reason I want to show you this is if I go up to the top here, notice the last one was 59D, and my next one is. That's not, a lot of times that's not what happens. All right? You might get a 59D, and the next one might not be sequential in order if you wait an amount of time. So if I went and added a bunch more right now, there's no guarantee that my next one would be 5A2, is what I'm saying. And it's no big thing. Don't look at the IDs in here as being this a sequential thing like we have been working with in MySQL. When we say auto increment, that's out the window now. All right. Now, one thing about this, because it's a little weird. This is me speaking, not in the book or anything else, but it's a little weird. Notice if I go down to the bottom of the screen here. You don't have to do this because I want to show you this. But if I type in CLS, cleared the screen, right? No, it didn't. Notice I can go up. That's actually a good thing, because if you want to see something you did earlier, you can do that. It basically just takes wherever you are and it pushes you to the top of the screen. Does that make sense? All right. All right. Now, some of the commands are going to be very, very similar to what we did in MySQL, such as, now you know this already, don't hit enter or anything, but you can type in this, db.users.find, but don't hit enter. We just did that, right? All right. So what if I only want to see the first couple records? I can do a .limit 2. And notice what it shows me, just the first 2. All right? All right. Because like I said, I'm just going to be throwing a bunch of stuff at you in here. We're not in any hurry at all to go through this. All right? And I can tell because this is one of those things that as I sat there and typed this in, I've got, 314 lines. And it took me 2 hours because I wanted to make sure everything worked, etc. We'll probably do it in a half an hour or so. And that's okay. That really and truly is okay. All right? So, all right. So what if we want to come in and we want to do a sort? All right? And let's say that we want to sort it on the last name. So I'm going to, again, go back up to the top of my screen. So we want to sort on last name. One thing is when you sort, the field that you want to sort on, you put either a number 1 or you put a number -1 by it. Okay? And if you want to sort in ascending order, you give that field a 1. If you want to sort in descending order, you give that field a -1. All right, now I want to show you something, and I don't want you to type for just a second, if you would. Just watch for a second, okay? So if I go through here and I type in db.users.find.sort, all right, then everything you want to do is going to be within parentheses and within one or more pair of curly braces. Now, I typically put a blank space in here. By no means do you have to. All right, and I'm going to put in like this, and I'm doing it like this, And I'm asking you not to type because I'm going to show you what I think is a better way of doing it in just a second. All right, so I've got here last name 1, like this. All right, so it's saying to sort it by last name. Well, then that's pretty much the order that we put it in, except I'm not first anymore. All right, but afterwards I put in Gabriel, then I put in Christopher, then I put in Aaron, and then I put in Angie. Now I should be between Aaron and Angie. Does that make sense? All right, so I'm going to hit enter, and you'll notice that's exactly where I am. All right, now there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. It's totally fine. But what you're going to find is a lot of people, when they type it in, and they put in their db.users.find.sort, whoops, try that again, .sort, all right, is what they put in there then, is they don't put any blank spaces in, plus the name you're sorting on does not have to be in double quotes. So I'm going to do it like this. Just say last name, just like that, colon, 1, and then like this. And you'll notice works the same way. All right, see that? Now, I'm not saying gee whiz or anything like that. I just want you to realize that virtually everything you do, there's more than one way of doing it. All right? So if you would, please go ahead, and I don't care if you use this one or you put the double quotes, but I want you to put in that command where I've got my cursor right there to make sure that you type it in and that it works. If you get an error, you probably mistyped. If you get an error and you think, no, I didn't, then just raise your hand. Everybody got that? Okay, so I'm going to put it in one more time. I'm going to put it in almost exactly like we just did. But I'm going to say db.users.find. You can do the same. Sort. But this time, I'm going to again do it on last name, just like we just did. But instead of saying 1, I'm going to say -1. That should do a descending sort. So Angie should be first, followed by me, followed by Aaron, followed by Christopher, followed by Gabriel. Does that make sense? All right. So I put it in like that, hit enter, and again, you'll notice, oh, it says I had something wrong. Well, when I did it, I put in 2 curly braces there. See that the nice thing about that? I'd like to say I did it on purpose. I didn't. But not only is it telling me that it's on line 1, which isn't hard to figure out because there's only one line, but it's telling me the position number, which is 20, and what I did wrong. That's kind of nice. All right? And it's a good news, bad news type of thing, in that if you screw up, yeah, it'll show you the error, but it won't go on. So let me try it again. db.users.find.sort last name -1. And again, so notice that now Angie's on top, wherever it is, there it is. So Angie's on top, followed by me. Like I said, it works the way that I told you that it would work. All right? All right, just to show you, and this is the last time we're going to need that other file, but we're going to bring in that last record, but before we do, just take a look at it before we do anything. Notice what I've left off on there, on purpose. All right? I have left off a last name, I have left off a salary, and although Gabriel and Christopher both have hobbies, unfortunately for the rest of us, we don't. All right? Not only that, when you look, hopefully you already have figured this out, but right here, that's an array, because it's within brackets, because I want to be able to put in multiple things. All right, so I have to put it in as an array, and it's an array of strings, for lack of better words. So go in and find, again, with mine it's lines 53 through 59. Copy that to the clipboard, and then just paste it in. All right, and you should have another one inserted. All right. And again, so there it is. So I'm going to clear my screen. with CLS, and I'm going to do a db.users.find one more time, and you'll notice at the bottom is the new record. All right. Okay. If we did this in reverse order, you already know this, so you don't have to type this in. You already know this. So that if we did this in reverse order, if I said db.users.find, and I put in here again last name, and I put in, and I put in -1. All right, you already know what's going to happen, except that now when we do this, that new record that we just put in should be the first one. Does that make sense? Should be, at least. So I'm going to hit enter. Oh, I didn't put in, after the find, I didn't put in my parens. All right. And this whole thing, yeah. No. db.users.find, last name -1. It's just a little.
Dot sort.
Oh, I forgot the dot sort. Thank you. Dot find dot sort. There we go. Thank you. And I didn't. Did I put in the -1?
Yeah, instead of typing it out again, you could just
No,
press
no, but
enter.
wait. Okay. Yeah. Just putting this in, what I did before,
Yeah.
it didn't recognize the command, so it didn't give me back anything. All right, it's nothing met that criteria of what I was trying to put in. All right, but technically, I guess it wasn't, what I put in wasn't illegal. But what I want to show you now is, we went back and we reran this. And you might say, well, wait a minute, why didn't that other one show? Remember, this person does not have a last name. That was why they purposely, it was left off, because they get pushed down at the bottom. All right? Again, it's not like that's a really cool type of thing. All right? But what if we did it the other way? What if we just did the db.users.find.sort, and we again did it on last name, and this time we gave it a 1 and hit enter. Well, now when you do that, you'll notice who's first, right? All right? So they're first. What if, when we're doing this, all right, what if we don't want that one to show? We just don't want that one literally to show. There's a skip command that you can use. Don't even worry about it right now. It's not that big of a thing. All right, it's 1 o'clock. Let's take a break. Let's come back at 1:15, and we're just going to start hitting. I got 4 or 5 pages worth of commands, and then we're going to just take a look at some other stuff and what we'll be doing starting next week. All right.